world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren and
and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen.
Hi, welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with Maren. And this podcast is a special one because I know it is coming at a time when we're meant to be the most inward this time of the year, and yet it is probably the most busy socializing, trying to get things done, wrap things up, whether it's a present or whether it's the year end, whatever it might be. And then we're mixed with a lot of things of what are we going to do with the holidays? You know, who are we going to spend it with? What are we going to spend? What are we going to eat? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? There seems to be so many questions, and it can be a great source of joy and inspiration, but it also can bring up a lot of heartbreak and hardships too. Some things that the shoulda, coulda, woulda, ought tos, you know. So this is a special one.
And just to be clear, in the Northern Hemisphere, the reason Stephanie said this is the most inward we're supposed to be, and we're speaking to the Northern Hemisphere at this point, because the way that the sun and nature works, this is the inward time of year. It's the yin part of year. It's the longest day of the longest night of the year. So we have the most darkness. And when you look around in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in that cold time of year where everything the trees pull their sap back, and all the plants have gone underground and the animals go into hibernate. So in nature, when we look around ourselves, everything has gone inward. And as Stephanie said, like, we're so torn as human beings because we're in this outward party, mode of the holidays. It's become an outward thing instead of what it used to be, which was a time with family, a time to celebrate our gifts, not necessarily to give gifts, to celebrate our gifts. Like, what would that be like to
Oh yeah. And to be
to be
present to them, to be present and to be present to each other. I think that might be the symbolic reason why we wrap up presents or gifts. And if we look at a deeper level outside of just the materialism or the physical, manifestation of that, it's like, and there's your question, your introspection, right? What are my gifts to give? And what are the gifts that I am receiving from another? And to be present to that.
Yeah, I love that, from the inward place of what are my gifts to give instead of what stuff do I have to give someone else. And really, that is something that the marketers have sold us.
Yeah, we've
It's
become consumers instead of citizens and a
yeah.
community, and this is maybe a time of a great shift to be able to turn inward. And yet I understand how hard that is to all of a sudden stop buying and consuming because it's been such a perpetual pattern. But to be able to then turn inward and going, what really matters right now? What is the most important? And not coming from a place of scarcity that I don't have enough to give. Yes, we all do. And it's inside of us. It's not in a store. It's not online. It's inside. And have we even introspectively turned inward to go, gee, I wonder what that is? What are my gifts? I know there's a great exercise, and I know Maren and I have done this before, a great exercise to ask some of the closest people in your life, like friends, family, loved ones, even coworkers, and just turn to them and say, what are my gifts? What is it that I bring to our relationship?
Yeah, what do you see?
Yeah, what do you see in me that I don't see? And it's a really wonderful thing to talk about giving and receiving. It's a wonderful thing to go and ask someone. And I know I did this one time with one of my best friends, and I remember her saying, commenting back, and I'm like, whatever she said absolutely touched my heart. I had no idea that's how she saw me. And I almost
Mm,
thought, part of me, that my skepticism would say, oh, you're saying that because you're my best friend. Of course you're going to say that. And she goes, no, 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 really, Stephanie, this is what I see in you. And it actually made me cry, not
mm.
out of tears of, it was almost like I had neglected that in myself. I couldn't even see it. And what a gift that was for her to reflect something that I could not see. And I think it's a wonderful practice at this time of year, a gift giving. I remember one time I was in a place in my life where I didn't have a lot of money and I wasn't able to fly home for Christmas to be with my family. And I had a lot of shame around that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I
Mm.
have nothing. And I sat down and I wrote out a Christmas card and I wrote out the 10 things I love most about you. And I wrote it out for my brother and I wrote it out for my mom and my dad and all those I knew would be around the Christmas table that day. And I remember my brother, he was young at that time. I think he might have been like, I don't know, early 20s, maybe late teens. And I remember him going, you made me cry. His funny thing, he was like, thanks a lot, Stephanie. You made me cry. And I'm like, I'm glad it opened your heart because
Yeah.
like my friend who did that, my best friend who said that to me, I'm like, I wanted you to see what I see in you. And I think that's what breaks my heart is when I don't see in myself what others do, or when I don't see like in you, like when you don't see yourself the way that I can
Mm.
see you, we miss it. And this in a time where we've been isolated from each other for so long, I think now we're starting to integrate and coming back together. And I think it's lovely to have the Christmas parties and the holiday galas and the time to actually recognize how great it is to come together and belong and share and touch and be in the actual physical presence of somebody and to be able to reflect to them what we love and what we find beautiful.
I think that's just spectacular. Those are the types of things where, like somebody will have that, keep those types of lists in their wallet for years. Or, you find somebody's card, like stack of cards that they kept through their whole lifetime. Everything else fell away. And those are the things that are most meaningful to us. And I wonder what it would be like if, I mean, oftentimes during this time of year, we find ourselves in the go push, got to get this, got to get that. And we find ourselves exhausted
Mhm.
and wondering, did I do enough? Did I get enough gifts? Have I made the right punch? Like all the stuff, right? Imagine like doing that and feeling exhausted, and somebody hands you a here are the 10 things I most love about you list. And it's like, oh, that's so,
Yeah.
there's so much meaning there. And that's what that is what I love about this time of year is the amount of meaning that is potentially there. It makes me sad how much it's become a consumer holiday. Um, and I
Yeah,
do see,
whether that is materialism or food, we tend to do both, right? And
yeah,
we get stuffed. And
we do.
I mean, honestly, if you think back in your childhood, a gift, if you can remember all your Christmas gifts that you've been given every Christmas, I would say you might remember one or two that were very special to you, but generally we don't remember the gifts
The
in the
stuff.
material, the stuff. But what we do is remember the stories, the memories. And
Yeah.
those might be good memories, they might be bad memories, difficult memories. And I think that's something to shift. It's like, what if we could make beautiful memories and it didn't have to have anything to do with materialism or anything to do with like consuming food?
Yeah. So, just as a quick story, when I was very young, I was under 10. I want to say I was probably 5 or 6. My grandmother gave me a doll, and I was such a tomboy. I played with my brother in his trucks and all of the things, and we lived out of state, so my grandmother didn't know me very well, and she was so excited for me to open this doll. And I ripped open the doll, and I looked at my brother's Tonka truck, and I took the doll, I threw her on the ground, I stomped on her, and I took my brother's Tonka truck in the other room and started playing. My grandmother was horrified, horrified, right? So you're you're talking about the stories, right? That's
Mhm.
what I remember. And here's what I remember is that my grandmother didn't know me well enough. Like she had her idea of who I was and who I should be. And like, oh, little girls love dolls. Well, this little girl didn't. And she didn't know me. And that's what I remember. And imagine like what is it like to give our gifts from a place of I want to know you. I want to connect to you. I want to be in relationship, especially in these years following COVID where we did get it's like isolated from each other,
Hmm.
you know? I think that those are spectacular things that, as our listeners, you could play with that this holiday season. And of course, once you play with it, report back and let us know how it went because
Yeah.
they're powerful. They're powerful things to do.
I think, asking the question why also,
Mm,
like, why am I feeling like I'm not enough? Or why am I feeling I have to make this the perfect dinner? Or why am I making this, whatever this is, to give to somebody? What does it really mean to me? And am I attached to the outcome, or am I, if we could just let go of all of the outer stuff. We have these wonderful, or I love rituals. I absolutely love rituals. And why I love them so is because it makes memories for me. It builds memories that I take in my
mm,
heart. And there's a saying, that I've heard from spiritual mysticism that say, when we leave, when we walk on from this life into whatever is meant to walk on, we don't take the materialism with us. We don't
yeah.
take, and we take the memories, we take who we've become in this lifetime. And so if we're not working with, well, who am I? What am I becoming? Who do I want to become? Not what do I want to do in my life? But if we're not asking ourselves those questions, then we don't ask those that we are wanting to give to either.
Mm,
Who are you? What would you like to become? Or what would support you? Those are, that's the gift of relationshiping. That's the gift of connection. And I think, one of my favorite rituals that I had as a little girl with my grandmother, I was really close with her. And we watched The Sound of Music every
mm,
single year at Christmas time. It's like, and I still, now I can't watch it without crying all the way through it, but it's not crying because I'm so sad that we had horrible memories. I'm crying because I miss her so much. And she's
yeah.
right there with me when I watch that, because as she aged, she lost her hearing and she couldn't hear a thing. And this
Mm,
is before the TV had caption underneath it to be able to know what was going on. But we had watched it so many times from the
yeah.
70s and the 80s that by the time, she was in her 90s and she couldn't hear and it didn't have caption, she still knew every single word and every song that we could sing together. And to me, that is the greatest gift my grandmother, well, one of the greatest gifts my grandmother and I had together was
Yeah.
that time.
That's so special. And I guess if there's one thing that I, for myself, and then selfishly for all of you out there, would want for this particular holiday season is to go to the deeper level, to take the road less traveled, and, you know, look inside and ask the bigger questions of what, the stuff that Stephanie was just talking about, the whys behind
Mhm.
why do I feel the need to make sure that everything is perfect? And whatever the answer is, it's not right or wrong or good or bad. It's not a reason to shame yourself. It's just starting to dive into the inquiry.
Mhm.
And then maybe take the five closest people to you and write a list like, hey, you know what? Let's do this Christmas. Let's write a list for each other of what are the top 10
Oh my
most powerful
gosh.
things. Wouldn't that
I
be
love
great?
that. I love that. Instead of giving gifts in the May of materialism gifts with each other, what if we just sat down with 5 of us and we wrote out the 5 most beautiful things we see in each other?
Yeah.
And then you have that, and that, to be able to reflect on that and even put it up on your wall. So when you have those days coming forth in 2024, you can go, "Oh my gosh, I have these gifts." Like, to really claim them, to really receive, because I believe that's also what the holidays are. It's like where there's darkness, there's always light.
Yeah.
That's why it might be one of the darkest, the shortest days of the year are now, but yet we have the most brilliant lights that are lit up in the towns and in our homes. And To me, there's always the opposites. Both are there. Light and dark are both there.
The other thing about it being the darkest time of the year, it's like when we go inward, it concentrates the light. And we can see this in nature too. So when a tree pulls its sap back, there's not less sap. It just is concentrated. It pulled back. So now you've got this concentration of light inside you. What a beautiful time to actually take a moment and go inside and explore the light and the beauty, and then share that in some words with somebody, even if it's in addition to, it's like maybe your family isn't ready to, or your friends are not ready to say, to heck with this, the material crap. I know in my life, I don't want anyone to give me any more stuff. I have so much stuff in my life. I need to purge personally. And so I would love to hear from people, like, what is that about me that speaks to you, that brings joy into your heart, that makes you want to, step up or do what's next or feel inspired, you know?
I love it.
And what a great thing to do with our teams. Like, yeah, wouldn't that be amazing, instead of buying a bunch of gifts? And maybe it's a both and. Maybe you buy the gifts and you also have an exercise that you do together.
But I think the most important thing is to do it with love. Don't feel like you're already enough. And I think sometimes we don't realize that we have everything that we need inside of us, and that things can actually be so beautiful by going inward and sharing that inward place with someone. That, we're afraid of emotions too. So the tears or the the sadness or the laughter, like, both are there. They're all there. And that it's okay. There's space for that. It's funny because, metaphorically, the whole teaching story of, Mary and Jesus didn't have a space to give birth. And that's a metaphor on a level too, of like where our feminine and our masculine doesn't have space to give birth, which the Christ child was representative of opening our hearts. That's where the cross comes from, is that you have a vertical line from your toes to your head, and you have a horizontal line with your arms stretched out, and that actually makes the cross. So it's like on a metaphor level, Mary, Jesus, and Joseph, we're all here to represent the divine feminine and the divine masculine, making space for the integration of the heart.
Right.
It's a
And
very
bringing
interesting,
a
and bringing it
gift
together
into the world.
And where do we not have space because we've taken it up with the shoulda, coulda, woulda, ought tos, or the isms, the perfectionism, isms, or whatever the isms are in your life.
Yeah.
What if we could let all that,
Consumerism.
what if we could let all those isms go and
And I
drop
love
in?
that you brought that up, because it's not another should. So this time of year, like, let go of all the shoulds. And if this feels like, oh, it's one more thing I should do, let it go. Just rest inside,
Mm,
right? It really is about making space and taking a time out, going within, and just
yeah.
being the inner womb, so that we can like start to move outward as the new year comes and that type of thing. So,
And make space for the in.
yeah.
There was no room in the in. It's like, well, make space in there. What's taking up space? What's crowded in there? And that's yours to discover. And it can be a beautiful house cleaning, so to speak, from the internal sense of mind and emotions.
Yeah. So there are some wonderful ideas. We would love to hear back from you on our Soulful Leaders, either on LinkedIn or on Facebook. And if you're not yet familiar with our 12 Days of Creation, speaking of space, it's a
Mhm.
great way for you to make space for what's incoming in 2024. It's a completely different way of, you're not goal setting for the new year, you're not doing New Year's resolutions. It's presencing over the 12 days of Christmas. It's using an ancient mystic way of doing this, presencing over the 12 days of Christmas, the incoming next 12 months of the year. And it's really spectacular. We've been doing it for a few years. If you'd like to join us, you can find information on our website, tslp.life, or you can find it on Stephanie's website, which is stephaniejallen.com, or my website, which is marendance.com. And we look forward to seeing you all next year. Or maybe there's one more podcast this year. You'll have to tune in to find out. We'll see you all next week on the Soulful Leader podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.